The next person I'd like to introduce to you is someone I'm very happy to be here. Someone who, one problem I've had getting candidates to come here is this: I hate in politics you have to deal with schedulers. And I can't stand, I know that's part of the game, but I actually got this man to come here by texting him. He's a great guy, and I've just gotten to know him while he's over here, and he helped us put out chairs and all that. I was like, well, you're the first gubernatorial candidate to help us put out chairs at one of our county party meetings. So I really appreciate that. And without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Yancey McGill to come talk to us about his campaign for governor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I clearly haven't been in the Senate. Sometimes you talk way too long, so I'll look for the nod and we'll get it. But I will share with you. It's a delight to be here tonight. And it brings back a lot of memories in the Rock Hill area, because when I was attending the Citadel, my wife-to-be was a student at Winthrop. And of course, every time we get out of that military school, we'd be heading this part of the state and seeing this young lady. But we're delighted to see there's so many people here that are affiliated with Winthrop and other schools and universities and technical colleges and other places as well. I would just like to start off by sharing a little bit about myself. My wife and I have been married 43 years. We have 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and thank goodness my baby girl, we're on the way of getting another baby in about a week. So that's a good thing. I told her, I said, you're getting mighty big, and she laughed, and she said, it's going to be a smart child. So I like that. She's one of these English level teachers, and she graduated from Clemson. And of course, my other daughter, Lisa, graduated from Clemson, and my son went into the technical college system. He wanted to go into criminal justice. And I learned a long time ago, you don't ever tell a young person, don't do something, you ought to pat them on the back and praise them for things that they like to do. Well, he's a very successful business person by his own right. And I can tell you now that all children are like parents, and all of us, we all from time to time make errors and mistakes. But that's the blessing of the Lord that always has got that repentance. But more than that, there's always better days that come. Today is a great day, because when we came in, we were here about 3 hours early, and I could not help but think that years ago when I came home from the Citadel, some people said you should consider running for public office. And I asked them what type of office, and they said city government. And I thought about that thing for a while, and an election cycle came up and it left, and I didn't do it because I wanted to have my mind set to do it. It is about public service. If you're going into these things about I, me, you're wasting your time. You can't achieve anything. A lot of people think you can, but there are a lot of good people in government at all levels. Norman is really a wonderful person. I met him when I was in the Senate and he was in the House, but his mannerism, he has got quite a mannerism. He knows how to talk to people and how to get things done. He was very close with Governor Haley, and I was fairly close with Governor Haley as well, but I will just tell you this quickly. We went in that first day to decide to run for city council, and that's what I like about seeing the crowd in this room. There are a lot of young people in here. I see you've got a very young probate judge. And that's a good thing. And they were talking about Benjamin Franklin a while ago, and Benjamin Franklin, he had some 22,000 people went to his funeral. So you had to have done some good things. But I will tell you that we went in, and the man looked up at me over his glasses. He was, I guess, in his late 70s, and he said, what can we help you with? I said, I want to sign up to run for city council. He said, fine, put your money down. So we put the money down, and he looked back at me and he said, sign here. He said, it'll be good exposure. You'll never win. But it'll be good exposure. We don't tell a 21-year-old that. So I went home and I thought about that thing, and I put on a pair of tennis shoes at 21 and started walking door to door. And we ended up winning with the majority vote out of about 7 people running. And it was a mayor race going on at the same time. And then later, I realized that I was always told there's no money, there's no resources, and I couldn't understand how in the world tax dollars are coming in and budgets are formulated, and at the beginning of the year, the war chest is full, how could it be no money? So with that said, I realized I wanted one day to run for mayor, be able to set the agenda and find out if the money was there. And so what we did is we ran for mayor and later got elected twice, 2 terms as mayor. And turned out there was a ton of money, we just didn't know it. But it depends on who's in that big seat can tell you whether that money is there or not. And so I'm gonna share a little different with you now, things so you'll know what is going on in state government. I will tell you that my father, we had been in the Senate, he had served as a mayor in the city council, and he started from the bottom up, and whenever he had his first career, he was cutting meat for a living in a meat market. And he worked very hard, and years later, he started building some houses and then started his real estate process of getting his license. And later in his life, he did fairly well, but he had to work. He worked long hours like everybody in this room. You remember when you first started, what you had and what you did not have. But I will tell you that that he ran for the House and he won. Then he in turn ran for the Senate and he won. And then he got this thing called colon cancer about 57, 58 years old. I didn't know what in the world, what it was all about, but it was new for our family. But they told him, you'll live for 3 years and you'll be with the Lord thereafter. And so when he was 60, he went to be with the Lord. But a smart person that he was, we were from the real old school. We were First Baptist members, where I'm still a member of the church, my wife and family. And but he believed in every night having a prayer time and reading Bible in different type, sharing the testimonies during the day. Well, how was your day? What did you do? He was a firm believer. But I am going to tell you that when he got elected to the Senate, he served 11 years, and we came from a county. I come from a county that had a lot of low to moderate income families, a lot of poverty. Unemployment rate was very high. It was about a 67, 68% minority district. And so, but he ran and he was fortunate enough to win. And then he started the progress of trying to change things in that small county. But then I realized along the way that, again, I would love to serve at a different level once I found out that he had gotten sick. So he passed, and we ran for Senate, and the fellow told me, son, you can run, but you're not going to win. Told me that again. Same man. I said, well, we'll try our best to see what we can do. And I had 2 African-American opponents that were very academic, very professional, and we got, I think it was about 78, 79% of the vote. But we did that same process. We went door to door as much as we could. And then I can tell you that when we got into Senate, you're not sitting on the front row, you're sitting on the back row of that Senate with that seniority. You don't have a whole lot of voice. And after a while, that didn't feel too good because it was hard going back telling people that in that tight district, we couldn't get funds for economic development and some of the other areas we wanted it. But the big advantage we had when we got there, there was this governor called Carroll Campbell. And Carroll Campbell, he invited me down to speak. I guess he did that with all the people. But we went down and he opened a few doors, but he said, you got to earn respect, you got to work at it and work at it, long hours, and we did it. But when we went into Senate, it was like 18, 19% unemployed. When I left the Senate, A few years ago, it was like 7.8% unemployment. Today, it's like 6.5%, and it's going down even lower. But we opened some doors, but where you have a lot of unskilled labor versus skilled labor, it's a hard thing to bring in a mega technology company, which we did. It was a call center, but not many people could go and do that type of work. And of course, I will tell you this, that we got immersed in the process, learned how, and later we were given a chairmanship of one of the 5 big committees of Senate Finance. It had 25 state agencies, and Department of Commerce was one, Park Recreation Tourism was one, and Port of Charleston, all these different agencies. And we worked at it. And what we did is we bring those agencies in for those public forums. And I'm gonna stop. I see 4 seconds on the clock. But I will tell you this, that we'd bring them in and say, how did you spend your money last year? What are you gonna do with the money you get this year? How much money, the ultimate question, do you have sitting on the shelf? They didn't like answering that question. And I can tell you now, we would say, tell us how much you have. And one of the agencies said we have 18 million sitting on the shelf that we've carried over year by year. And I said, why are you asking for 7 more million this year? Why do you not spend some of what you have? They didn't want to talk about that. That wasn't the deal. But I learned state government has watched their funding over the years. It's a AA, AAA, one of only 8 states in the country that has that kind of credit rating. So it has been protected all along. And I will tell you that that in this process, we learned very quickly the biggest missing element, because years later when we became lieutenant governor, and then Henry became governor, and then he asked me would I serve as director of aging, and we did. And Henry and I talked then, and I said, Henry, you and I both want to run the same thing. And we laughed about it. And I said, but I tell you what we'll do, all over the state, 160 senior citizen centers all over the state. And I said, I will just tell you that, that I'm gonna call your name, but I'm gonna call my name a little bit louder. And he laughed, at which we both laughed at it. But Henry and I have been friends for many years. And I can tell you that, and a lot of the other candidates, we close friends. But I will just tell you this, that, and not going all through it, when we restructured government, we took a big lead in the Senate for Carroll Campbell to go from about 110 agencies down to some 90. That was really a big thing at that time. The legislative state, they did not want the executive branch to have so much strength. But the last thing that I'll just tell you is when Nikki Haley was in the House, we worked together on a lot of issues, the same as Greg worked with as well. But she called me down her first day and said, if you don't mind, I have 5 issues I want you to work on for me to help me get passed. I want you to do it in the House and in the Senate. My whole learning process taught me 170 members of the House and Senate. If you could count the numbers, you could do anything. And I saw former governors knew how to count and put those numbers together. And so I will just tell you this, that, we spoke a couple of minutes with a man and his wife outside, but when it was over, we passed those issues in the Senate for them. But I didn't know she was going to do this thing called a report card. And she gave us an A+, and a lot of others she gave low grades on. But she went around the state and she called your name out and said you made an F, or you made a C, or whatever it would be. But that makes it better than hard going back into a session when you try to make it work. But here's the thing I'm going to tell you. 80+ agencies in the state. I'm here to venture to tell you that we need audits on every one of them. I'm here to tell you we need to swap up on some of these accountants that deal with these state agencies. We need to find out how much is in every account. It needs to be disclosed so you know it. I can tell you that DOT is awash in money. I will also tell you that whenever that vote came up about the tax, everybody said do the tax. because we can get the roads fixed. Everybody's still riding in potholes right now. I will just tell you that with that process, and I'm sorry to go this long, but it's rare I ever get to tell you this, but I'm gonna tell you something. This state is awash in money. If you on the inside at DOT or any of these agencies, you can pretty much go and get done what you need to get done. You need to hear that. Keep in mind, when they voted for the tax increase for the gas, all of a sudden when it passed, in less than a week or two, all these roads started getting resurfaced. That same process occurred back in the early 90s, right after Governor Campbell was governor. The thing is that it just depends on who is at that table, and if your Senate and House members are not part of that talk that goes on at that table, they get left out. You got to hear it, you've always heard it, but you hear it from somebody that served years with Senate Finance. And so what I'm telling you is that this state would never have had a AA, AAA credit rating all these years. Now, this thing with this pension fund and this thing with these electric companies, absolutely horrible. They need to find out attorney who made those wise management decisions, and they need to be held accountable. There will be people footing that bill for years. Years ago, they brought a bill around in the Senate, and I remember the leaders that did it, and they brought it by and had all these signatures and asked me if I would sign the bill. I don't run from anything. I looked at it and I said, wait a minute, if this thing doesn't work, the citizens of this state got to make good on this money. I didn't sign, I didn't co-author with the bill, nor did I vote for the bill. I'm just telling you, a lot of people were told it was the right thing to do. At the moment, it sounded good, but I'm telling you, 55% was based with Scanner, folks, some 45% with Santee Cooper. We know a good many of these people, but these people have got to be held accountable. That's the whole problem. At South Carolina's government, I've seen Sanford, I've seen them all ask for disclosure, especially Nikki Haley and others. Make these disclosures, let the public know what's available. What you don't do is go to local government. A lot of you talking about running for county council. There's a thing called aid to subdivision. That's where they send these unfunded mandates home. About 82% of the money was going to county governments to balance the municipalities. But what happens is they were steady cutting that money down. So it got cut from 220 million back to about 170 million plus or minus. The only reason I'm sharing these things is because it's going to be rare that you hear it. Because everybody running, they've got their own thing they would share, but the money is the most important issue. We lose this AA, AAA credit rating because of some weakness of management of money. We're going to have a problem in this state. And I will also tell you the last thing. I talked with a lady, Peggy Boyd, over retirement, and I asked her, I said, back when they lost the first couple of $1 billion back in the early 2000s, explain to me $2 billion, what was the issue? Of course, at that time, they had a fellow that was director with his own money and bought one of these $400,000 or $500,000 Maseratis or something, whatever you call it. But I'll tell you this, that was his money to do what he wanted, but he must have been getting a pretty good paycheck. But I will just tell you that she said we had probably around mid 37 to $42 billion in the account. As of today, we've lost $17 billion in that account. They have taken all these people out, put all these new people in, but that is retired school teachers and retired to be state employees' money. And if those type things aren't taken care of, I'm not going to be able to go home because my wife is a retired educator. She's asked me 10 times, am I going to have a check in a few years? I said, certainly you're going to have a check. They're going to have to jump on it. They're going to have to work it out. There's about $30 billion in that account today, out of that 30-some-odd billion a few years back. And I will tell you this, that people are quick of negativity not to talk about it. They don't want to talk about this stuff. But I went into finance and talked with the leader, and I told him then, you're brand new in this position, you better bring these people in, and you better disclose it, or in the future you're going to have to hold it. And so what I'm telling you is corporate, South Carolina, every person in this room, citizens all over the state, they are in a position where they keep funding these different issues to go on, but we've got to have far better accountability. Anyway, that was too long, but you keep going.